start off talking about the composition of water, what it is, how it reacts to different elements, different objects. Because understanding that, we'll understand a little bit more how our body is able to ingest and get rid of some water. We'll talk about how much water, how much fluids we should be intaking every day. Oh, here comes a lot more people. Welcome, welcome.
Praise God.
We'll be talking about tap water. Should we be drinking tap water? Should we be filtering tap water? We'll go a little bit into the pH of water. Does it really make a difference to our body? Is it changing the pH in your body? And then I also want to touch on if we're not adequately getting enough fluids, what kind of impacts that have on our body. So first off, does anybody know what water is made out of?
Water.
Good. H2O, there we go. All right.
I'm going.
H2O, pretty simple. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. There you go.
Wow.
So I'm a very visual person, so one way if you want to visualize a water molecule, you're just going to make a peace sign. We're going to have our fingertips are going to be those 2 hydrogen molecules, and then our fist is going to be that oxygen. And then connecting points is going to be the bond between the hydrogen and the oxygen. Someone's trying to get in here. So how those bonds connect is usually one of those molecules are negatively charged and one's positively charged. Think of it as magnets. If we put 2 positive ends of magnets together, usually they don't want to connect. But if we put a positive and a negative magnet together, they're going to stick together. So that's kind of how those bonds work. We have negatively charged and positively charged. Fascinating thing about water is it can take many different forms. We mostly know it as a liquid. It can become a gas in the form of steam. And then we also have solid in the form of ice. All right? And basically what's happening is the bonds between those different water molecules are changing. If you look at steam, basically we're heating up that water and those molecules are becoming further apart. One very fascinating thing about water and how the molecules work is when it becomes a solid, normally those bonds become a lot more dense and compact. So if we take something that's a solid and drop it in the liquid form of itself, it's going to sink to the bottom. But water doesn't work that way. Those molecules actually become further apart, and that's the reason that ice floats on top of water. Now, that's significantly important to how life on Earth is able to actually survive. Most of what produces oxygen, gets rid of carbon dioxide out of the air is actually through our plant life in the oceans. So if water didn't float or become less dense than its liquid form, when it's a solid, the bottoms of our oceans would be covered with sheets and sheets of ice. We wouldn't have as high of photosynthesis, we wouldn't get as much oxygen in the air, as much carbon dioxide out of the air. Good chance that life on Earth would not exist if water didn't work in that way. So, I want to make sure I'm covering everything. Talk a little bit about water being liquid, ice, basically solid, and then some gas. There is a 4th state that water can be in, and it's called structured water. This is basically how we were talking about those bonds being negative and positively charged. Structured water works in a way where both of the charges are positive and they can connect together. This is fairly debatable if structured water is better for us. There are some in our body, but not enough conclusive evidence if ingesting it actually makes a difference or not. So I didn't really want to go into that too much, but I thought it fascinating that there's more than just a liquid, a solid, and a gas. All right, so we're going to talk about how water can either dissolve or repel certain types of elements. Think of sugar. If we pour sugar into water and mix that sugar up, it's going to dissolve that sugar. This is what we call hydrophilic, meaning the sugar loves water and it's going to combine with it. Now on that other end, we have what's called hydrophobic, meaning something that doesn't like water. Most of the time that's going to be in the form of a lipid, so either like fats, oils, greases. You can observe this pretty easy by just taking some water, dumping a little bit of oil on it. You can see the distinction between that oil and that water. So that's important of how our body actually absorbs water. One of the biggest ways it does it is through a term called diffusion. So as we ingest water, it gets into our stomach, gets into our gut, there's thin layers of fat that are basically the water has to go past. Looks like we're having some issues with that door. But the thing about water and with lipids is that those bonds that we talked about, they can slightly be altered. So as we're pushing water out of our gut, trying to get it into our cells, it pushes against those thin layers of fat. Both of those actually change the structure of the water and of the lipids so that it can slowly slide past that fat and be able to be absorbed into our cells. Our cells use that to create proteins for our hair, skin, all that other fun stuff. Now this is a very, very slow process, and we'll get into reason why ingesting water later at night is something that should be a little bit limited, but there's another way that our body can absorb and get rid of water. This was actually discovered about 10 years ago, so it's fairly new. They're still doing a lot of research on it, but it's called an aquaporin channel. So what we have is if we look at our cell, let's just say my fist is a cell, and we stab a straw into that cell, basically that's what's causing water getting in and out of that cell. This is a very rapid rate at which water is absorbed or getting rid of. The insides of basically those straws are very hydrophobic, meaning it doesn't want water in them, so as soon as water gets put in it, it's going to shoot it out as fast as it can. We're looking at places on our body that have very, very high concentrations of these aquaporin channels. We can look at our tear ducts. Think about getting something in your eye. What's one of the first things that happens? It wants to swell up with a bunch of water and try to get that out. It's because there's a ton of these aquaporin channels. Our bodies basically sending receptors to our eyes saying, hey, we need to get this out of there, so it's pushing a bunch of water out of our eyes. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so two different ways our body can absorb and get rid of water. One's a lot faster, one's a lot slower. But let's talk a little bit about how much water we should be drinking. All right, so I'm going to make this statement and then I'm going to go back and kind of talk about it a little bit. But on average, this is not working out, this is not being in like extreme heat or extreme cold. This is just kind of having a nice relaxing day. Bare minimum, we want to drink about 8 ounces of water every hour for the first 10 hours that we're awake. All right? So if you're not good at math like me, that comes out to about 80 ounces of water. I'll discuss in a little bit why the first 10 hours is so important. But 80 ounces of water over 10 hours. If after that 10 hours you still feel thirsty, please, please, please drink more water. Body's telling you you need more water, so please drink it. If we're exercising, there's actually a math problem that we had to do. This was theorized by somebody years ago. Very recently, somebody took that theory, actually put it to use. And what it is you're going to take your body weight, divide it by 30. So whatever number you get, that's how many ounces of water you want to be drinking every about 15 to 20 minutes during exercise. As we exercise, we're going to be breathing heavy, we lose a little bit of water that way. We're going to most likely be sweating. If we're outside in extreme heat, most often we're going to be sweating and losing a lot of water, so this is a good way to help replenish that water. Yes?
You said divide by 30, you mentioned you drink every hour?
Every 15 to 20 minutes. So, just like the 10 hours and the 8 ounces, with this, that whatever number you're getting from that equation, on average you want to drink about every 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't mean you have to set an alarm for every hour or every 15 to 20 minutes. This is just averaging what we want to do. All right? So let's say I wake up at 8 a.m. I don't start drinking water until 10 a.m. I miss 2 hours of water, but I drink 16 ounces of water at that time. I'm averaging out how much I'm getting. So don't feel like you have to only get 8 ounces or whatever your equation comes out to during those time markers. All right?
That's still within the 10 hours?
If we can, yes.
Okay.
And I'll get into that whole 10-hour thing in just a second. Yes.
Have you heard of your body weight and then divide that by 2 in ounces?
I haven't heard that.
That's what I've always been told
Yeah.
too. Like I
Okay,
my trainer like 10 years
divided by
ago.
2,
Yeah.
that's something else.
Yeah.
Again, that 80 ounces is just kind of like a relaxing day. You're not doing anything strenuous or anything like that. It's kind of base level, what our body needs to sufficiently work right. That body weight divided by 2. Didn't really look into that or like find anything on it. Probably not bad. But there are also things out there that can dehydrate us. Specifically, I'm going to talk about coffee, because most people I know drink coffee. Coffee is a diuretic, so anytime we drink something that's going to dehydrate us, we're going to want to do a 2-to-1 ratio water to whatever we're drinking. So if the average cup of coffee is about 8 ounces, we want to accompany that with about 16 ounces of water. All right. Now that 16 ounces of water, that Galpin equation, that body weight divided by 30, that does not include that 80 ounces. So this is on top of that 80 ounces of water that we're already drinking. All right. So some of us might be drinking quite a bit of water. Now, let's say if we're working out or if we're in really, really extreme heat and we're just profusely sweating, we want to take that equation that we have and then we want to multiply it by 1.5. Don't have to do this all the time. It's just if we're working extra hard or if we're losing a lot of extra fluid, a good way to make sure that we're replenishing that. All right? Any questions? All right. We're good. Yes?
Like I don't drink coffee, but I drink energy drinks.
Yeah.
Should it be treated the same way?
I would treat it the same way. About double how many ounces that energy drink is with water. About a 2-to-1 equation.
Okay.
All right.
Can you repeat what you said about the exercise portion? So
Yeah.
8 ounces of water a day, and then when you're exercising, you do what?
It's your body weight divided by 30. And then you want to drink whatever that number is in ounces every about 15 to 20 minutes.
But
So,
then strenuous exercise, you're multiplying that number by 1.5.
yes.
Pretty much 20 ounces now.
So for me, during that equation, I'm roughly about 180 pounds. If I divide that by 30, it comes out to about 6. So about every 15 to 20 minutes, I want to drink an additional 6 ounces of water. So
As you're working out.
yeah, working out in extreme heat, extreme cold, if we're just losing a lot of fluid very quickly, that's what we want to go off of. So let's go back to that 10-hour window I was talking about.
They can't do that at any other time later.
Well, of course we start the seminar and then the door gets stuck.
Oh, okay.
So that 10-hour window.
Rubber mat popped up so you can't get the door open.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So that 10-hour window that we talked about, that mostly goes off of our body's ability to filter out water. More specifically, our kidneys. So from the moment we wake up, our body's basically going to take the dial of how our body's filtering water and put it up at a very high rate so that we're able to get out any contaminants, any waste that our body doesn't need, we're able to get that out of. Any water that our body actually needs to use and put to use, it's able to hold on to that. So after that 10 hours, our body starts to dial down how effective our kidneys are filtering that water. So you can drink water after 10 hours, just know it's not going to process it as effectively. More likely than not, that's when we're going to start urinating a lot more, specifically at night. Let me make sure I covered everything. Hey, the door's working. All right, got that, awesome.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
And you might come to it later, but is there any way to make it so that the amount of water you take in can double, like, or you can add to it to help hydrate you better? Because for somebody it's like a sleep 11 ounces of water 15 minutes is near impossible.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be. I mean, at times it can happen, and there's other times it'll make you want to throw up.
Yeah.
It's just, is there anything you can add to the water that makes your body like?
I don't know the specifics of it. I know there's certain like water enhancements you can get. Just in case anyone couldn't hear the question, it was, is there anything we can do to enhance the amount of water so we don't quite have to drink as much in a small amount of time?
I'm thinking like liquid IV.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of thinking of because I know it says it's like a hydration multiplier. Some of that's going to have to do with the electrolytes in it. They put other stuff in there too to help your body retain more of that water.
We got a class going on here. Shut up.
I didn't go too in depth into like electrolytes or like adequate electrolytes that you need.
Because how can you?
Yeah, really.
But most often than not, we're going to get the electrolytes that we need from food alone. Unless we're profusely sweating and losing a lot of liquids, then we may need to supplement with something to help boost our electrolytes. But as far as, like your question was, making it so that we don't drink as much, I don't know. I didn't really do too much research into that aspect of it. Definitely a good question, though. Let's see. So, get back to where I was, make sure I got everything awesome. Got that. All right. So I know one problem people face, me especially, is I'm terrible at drinking water throughout the day. So I drink it a lot more at night, and then I wind up waking up multiple times throughout the night. Have 3 tips to help reduce the amount of times you wake up at night. First one's pretty straightforward. Adequately hydrate throughout the day. Again, I'm terrible at. It's going to help. If you are waking up 1 to 2 times throughout the night, that's fairly normal, but if it's something where those times are really disrupting your sleep, or if you're waking up 2, 3, 4 times throughout the night, these tips are made to help. So definitely hydrate enough throughout the day so that way we don't have to rely on that water, especially since we talked about it. The kidneys are going to turn down how much it's really filtering. So we're going to excrete a lot more water after that 10 hours. To try to reduce the amount of water that you're intaking past that 10-hour mark, if possible. And that's if you're adequately hydrating throughout the day. If you're not adequately hydrating, you feel thirsty past that 10 hours, please drink more water. All right? Number 3, so the rate at which you drink water actually does make a difference. We talked about that diffusion a little bit, so how the water gets past that lipids, those fats, that's going to play a role. So if we're ingesting a lot of water real quickly, our bodies, especially after that 10-hour mark, it's going to not filter as much, but also it's not going to absorb as much, so it's going to push a lot more out compared to if we're sipping water in smaller quantities over longer periods of time. And the body doesn't have as much to filter, it's not going to push out quite as much. And if we're adequately hydrating throughout the day, getting what we need within our first 10 hours, and we still feel a little bit thirsty, a good tip is after that 10 hours, try to reduce your water to about 5 to 8 ounces. More sipping it rather than gulping it. All right? But again, that's if we're adequately getting enough water, still feel thirsty, definitely drink more water. Can't stress that enough. All right? I'm not telling you to stop once you hit your goal. If you feel thirsty, get more water.
I heard nutritionists say that a good indicator if you're getting enough water is how many times a day you urinate. Not necessarily the color of your urine or anything like that, but most people should be urinating at least 5 times a day.
I definitely do more than 5 times a day.
Oh, so do I. I'm a woman. but some people maybe go an entire day and only urinate twice.
Yeah, I know for a long time it was look at the color of your urine, good indicator if you're dehydrated.
Right.
going into more research with water, I found 2 other ways to kind of test to see if you're dehydrated. They're not 100% accurate, but it can help with kind of an indicator. One is you can lightly pinch the top of your skin, and if everyone wants to do that along with me. So we're just gonna lightly pinch it and then let go. If it takes more than about 3 seconds to lay down flat, go back to normal, good indication that we're adequately hydrated. But there's some different factors that go into that. Age plays a role. Some people it just takes longer for the skin to lay down more flat. So it's not 100% accurate, but if your skin normally lays down flat, goes back to normal within 3 seconds, should be adequately hydrated. But on that opposite end, if it's taking about 3 to 5 to 6 seconds for the skin to go back to normal, then there's a good chance you might be dehydrated. Same thing you can do with your fingertip. If you just gently push on your fingertip, and then it takes about 3 seconds to go back to that normal pinkish color, most likely you're hydrated, but again, if it takes about 3 to 5 seconds, if not longer, good chance you may need some more water. Not 100% accurate, but if your skin normally reacts within that 3-second mark and it's taking longer, you could be dehydrated. All right. So let's talk about, real quickly, not getting enough fluids, what that can do for you. As little as 2% dehydration or not getting enough water can start to play a role in our cognitive and physical abilities, to the point that we may develop some brain fog. Our short-term and long-term memory may be affected by not getting enough fluids or being as little as 2% dehydrated. Our critical thinking may be delayed as well. As far as that physical output, mechanical output from our body, let's say if we're running, we won't be able to run as far, as hard, for as long, as little as 2% dehydration. That's how critical that is, that it doesn't have to be like huge amounts of water you're missing or fluids that you're missing, just a tiny, tiny little bit can start to affect your body. We're all good there. All right. Any other questions right now before I move on to our next topic? Good?
I have one.
One.
So I was told to drink a gallon of water a day. Is that the 80 ounces? I don't even know. Gallon.
Question was, if you couldn't hear, told to drink a gallon of water a day.
Is that a lot? That's a lot.
I don't know how many ounces are in a gallon.
I know, neither do I.
That's the beautiful thing about the internet.
128.
128, so that might be enough depending on how much you're sweating, your physical output. Because for me, if I was to drink about a cup of coffee a day, work out for about an hour a day, I'd be around 120 ounces of water a day. So gallon, if you're working out for about an hour, if you're having some caffeine or anything like that, gallon of water is a pretty good indicator. Yes?
So I know this class is about water, but is Gatorade good way to hydrate also? Separate? Yes and no. The sugar is bad. The electrolytes that help restore your body.
Yes, exactly. Question was, is Gatorade a good way to hydrate the body? Brought up that the sugar isn't necessarily good. Sugar can dehydrate us a little bit, but the electrolytes in the Gatorade are good to help replenish us after sweating or doing a lot of physical activity. So yes and no. If you're using Gatorade, I would suggest going for like a no sugar option.
Isn't the aminos like the case? It does the same thing, but in better aminos.
Aminos, that's going to more play a role in our muscle rather than our water intake.
It's a huge struggle for me to drink aminos while I'm working out. It is
And I mean, that can be your water, drinking your aminos in your workout, that can be your water intake. That's what I do as I'm working out. So I try to fill up, like, I meant to bring it with me, my little blender bottle I filled up with water and aminos. And that's what I try to drink. Because for me, I need to average about 18 to 24 ounces of water while I work out. It's about 22 to 24 ounces, so I try to finish one of those. All right. Are we ready to learn about tap water?
Yes.
All right. So, diving into tap water. I actually learned a lot about tap water. Usually if you ask people about tap water, it falls into two different categories. That first category being, there's nothing wrong with tap water. It's water, it's clean, it's safe, let's drink it. The other category is going to be absolutely not. I will not drink tap water. It's disgusting. It's terrible for you. Diving into this, I was definitely that first side, and then I quickly turned to, no, I do not want to drink tap water. And it all kind of depends on where you live, if your tap water's good, I guess. They've done studies around the world. More often than not, you're getting what's called DBPs, or disinfectant byproducts, in your water. It's what they use to help clean your water from making sure there's no chemicals, no sewage in it, but those disinfectants leave behind a byproduct. Those disinfectant byproducts will actually start disrupting our endocrine system, which produces our hormones. So a good way to find out if your tap water has a lot of these DBPs in them, you can go to like a Google search, enter in your zip code, type in water analysis. It's going to pop up a ton of information, but your government is supposed to freely give you this information. There's a lot of different things to look for. That's a whole nother seminar right there. But specifically, I want to talk to you about fluoride in water along with our tap water. Different opinions on fluoride. I'm not really going to get into why it's put into our tap water, but more and more research, specifically within the past 10 years, talking about ingesting fluoride. Turns out that fluoride starts to wreak havoc on our thyroid system. Now, if you don't know too much about what the thyroid system does, it helps to create, I guess, better brain function, controls your mood, it controls your metabolism, it goes down to your cellular health. I don't know if I covered it, but our digestion, a lot of different things our thyroid produces. Fluoride can start to shut that off. If we're looking, there's a study done in 2018 determining what is too much fluoride in our water. 0.5 milligrams per liter of water or higher is actually what's causing our thyroid system to shut down or not work properly. So what we want to do is make sure that we're getting clean, effective water. Best way to do that is filtered water. Different ways to do it. I want to go through that because depending on your budget, there's different ways that we can do it. I started using a Brita filter, fairly inexpensive. Every few months you got to buy a new filter. It's not too bad. This is what's called carbon filters. It's going to get rid of those DBPs in our waters, those disinfectant byproducts, but it won't filter out the fluoride in our water. For that, you're going to want to look for something that's going to be a little bit more pricey. I want to say it's Berkey makes a system that actually filters out the DBPs and filters out that fluoride, but that's going to range between about $200 to $500 to $600. A little bit more expensive, but the nice thing is it comes in usually big containers, so you don't have to worry about filling it up every single time you're trying to get a glass of water. Now, if you're looking for something for your whole house, you can buy systems that connects directly to your house plumbing, so that every faucet that you turn on is putting out filtered water. That's going to be a lot more expensive, up into the thousands of dollars. Not everybody has that. Definitely not me. There is a no-cost way that we can help filter out some of the disinfectants, some of the fluoride. It's not 100%. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a large container filled with water, and then we want to let it sit out for about 6 hours, sorry, not 6 hours, about 12 hours to about 2 days. We want it to be uncapped, but we want to make sure the stuff doesn't fall into it. So if you put like a very thin cloth on top of it, that's going to allow anything that's in the water to evaporate out of it. by letting it sit out, those disinfectants actually start to sink to the bottom of the water. So what you're going to want to do is take about the top 2/3 of that water. It's going to be a lot cleaner, and then dispose of that bottom third of the water. Not the most effective way, but it doesn't cost you anything. All right. I believe that's what I want to talk to you about tap water. Any questions about tap water?
Is the one here filtered?
Yes, it is. So,
But it depends on how often the filters are changed.
Yeah.
So,
And we have checked Fergro here, if you guys are on Fergro.
Yeah.
They don't have fluoride in the water.
Until it
You can tell at summertime when they pull a little bit of water from it. Then we start to fluoride.
all right.
Fergro does not have fluoride.
So if you couldn't hear it, Fir Grove does not have fluoride in the water until summer times, where it pulls it from Tacoma. Tacoma. All right.
But they have a tap in South Tacoma where you can get unfluoridated.
Nice. All right. I didn't know that. I'm learning stuff too. All right. Let's go into magnesium and calcium in our water. All right. Start that off. 2019, the European Union did testing about does higher amounts of calcium and magnesium in our water actually create a difference. What they found out that if you're exposed to or ingest magnesium and calcium-enriched water between 8.3 and 19.4 milligrams per liter, you actually have a 25% less chance of cardiac fatality. Not saying it's the only way to prevent cardiac issues, but in their study, it dropped it by 25%. Compared to ingesting magnesium and calcium-enriched water between 2.5 and 8.2 milligrams per liter. So what they found out is that the more magnesium and calcium that is in your water, actually the higher the pH value of your water is going to be. Make sure I get this correctly. So this is where I kind of get all over the place. So you don't have to drink necessarily up to 19.4 milligrams per liter of magnesium-enriched water, or what it's going to be is more of an alkaline water, meaning it's a higher base and less acidic. But what they found out that if you have a higher pH in your water, the hydrogen in your water is actually going to be elevated. And what that hydrogen is doing, they're still doing a lot of research on it, but what they found out, that hydrogen is actually helping to lower inflammation in your body and also lower your blood pressure. Again, these are not the only ways to do it, but it's a way to actually help. When I was doing the research for this too, one of the things I was looking at was questions about, does higher pH in your water actually change the pH of your body? The answer to that is no. The pH of your body is very, very regulated. If we're just looking at our intestines, the pH of the body will drastically change up and down, more acidic, more alkaline. So drinking pH water doesn't affect the pH of the body, but what they did find out that if you drink a higher pH value of water, our body's going to absorb that water a lot quicker. Not meaning that drinking lower pH, our body's not going to absorb it. It's just going to take a longer process to absorb it. Same thing with the temperature of our water. Studies found out that colder water versus like room temperature water, that colder water was not absorbed quite as quickly as room temperature in warmer water. Doesn't mean you don't have to drink, or you can't drink cold water. I know with summertime coming up, a lot easier to drink cold water than room temp water. I'm not telling you how to consume your water, just giving you ways that help absorb a little bit more. That brings me back to another point about those DBPs, those disinfectant byproducts. If we heat up water that has high amounts of those disinfectants in it, it doesn't actually kill off those disinfectants, it actually makes it worse. So boiling water to purify it of the DBPs will actually make it a little bit more harmful for you. That's one thing personally I changed, because I have a coffee maker at home. I used to just fill it up with tap water, gets run through, super heated, and now I'm drinking that higher concentration of DBP tap water in my coffee. So now I'm drinking filtered water in my coffee, which makes me feel a little bit like a snob, but it's also a little bit safer. All right. Make sure I got everything here. While I get caught up on my notes, does anyone have any other questions?
On the pH, so you said calcium and magnesium. Is that in the pH
Yes.
water? And what's the level that? I mean, if you go by pH, I used to buy pH water all the time.
Yes.
So
So what I found out, the pH of water is if it's above a 7.9 to about a 9.2, that's a really good area. If you're buying more higher pH water, that's usually where it sits.
yeah, I just didn't know if it was worth buying all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Or, yeah.
And there's ways to make your water more pH available, or I guess more hydrogen enriched, because that's what it's doing. One of the ways is distilled water. It's a very complicated filter system, or you can buy it just already bottled, but it's more expensive, or I guess very expensive, but it's also pulling out a lot of the magnesium and calcium out of the water that helps make it a little bit more beneficial.
So the distilled water's better, or can be.
It's removing the magnesium and calcium, but it's making it clean while also slightly raising the hydrogen levels in it.
Okay.
But it's also a little bit expensive. There's a way called reverse osmosis water. Basically, it uses a series of filters along with like different types of chemicals to neutralize different disinfectants, the fluoride in the water. It removes a little bit of the magnesium and calcium, but it keeps a good level of the advanced hydrogen levels in the water. Again, that's going to be a little bit more expensive. If you're looking to just, I guess, lower cost, raise the pH of your water, or raise the hydrogen levels in the water, there's magnesium tablets you can get. It's not just like an average magnesium tablet, it's specifically meant for like dissolving in water. A couple things I want to point out: don't put it in any carbonated water. Don't put it in hot water. It's going to make a mess, and it's going to cause a little bit of discomfort. But if you're doing that, it increases the amount of magnesium, increases the amount of hydrogen in the water. You want to drink it within about 5 to 15 minutes, though, to get the most out of it. Yes?
Along those lines, when we're talking about bottled water, because there's a gazillion different products on the market, and I've heard studies of Dasani actually salts theirs so that you drink more Dasani water.
Sounds about right.
Right, and so, but then there's spring water, distilled water, like all these, yeah.
Yeah,
Of
most-
like, on the back, can we even look at on the nutrition label, because it's pretty much, it's water, so,
Yeah.
but does it give those breakdowns? I've never looked, actually.
It tells you what's in it, but at least on mine, it doesn't give a breakdown.
Okay,
Yeah.
like, at that level, if you could look at the label and be like, no, I want to stay away from this one, I want this one, or, I
Yeah.
guess you can
You give it a little food glass of water.
exactly.
Yeah.
Especially if you're leaving your car. Right.
I've heard that about Dasani before, putting in salt water. I don't know.
Okay. But is there preference as of health-wise, if like spring water generally is better than alkaline, or any variation, or?
Are we looking for like if it's like cleaner, or if it's...
Yeah, just overall health-wise, if one has, or is more
Are you asking
positive.
brand name? Like, what's the brand name better than the other?
Well, no, because that would be, I don't know, I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, anything you're buying in a bottle should be filtered, so it should be clean of those DDPs. It should be clean of fluoride, unless it's printed on there. Anything else they add, they should put on the label. I feel like that's a legal issue if they don't.
Yeah. But they can mislabel all day long.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
As far as like brands, I don't specifically know brands that are better than others. I've heard conflicting stuff with like Fiji water. Oh, it's natural. It's like spring. It's good. But then I've also heard that they put other stuff in that water that's not necessarily as good. So.
Makes you don't want to drink water.
Right. Hey, drink your water. Just be careful what you drink.
Dan, we'll go back to soda. Don't drink the water.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
That still has water.
Yeah.
Add a little vodka. There you go.
All right. I feel like there's one other thing I want to touch on real quick. Let me see if I skip over it.
Talking about water.
Oh, yes. So the higher, this is about the pH of water, the hydrogen about water. More studies are coming out that the higher the pH water that you can drink, the better your body can flush out what's called free radicals. Free radicals can do a few different things to our body. They can basically attach to different types of cells, different things in our body. If you really look at it, we're talking about the bonds earlier between like the hydrogen and the oxygen between water. Basically those bonds, the charge between it isn't exactly right. So when it bonds to something, it's kind of mutating that. So drinking a higher pH water can actually help the antioxidants. Any antioxidants that we're taking help straighten out or get rid of any free radicals additional in our body that may harm us. I want to say that's the last little bit I was going to cover. Unless anyone has any other questions.
I know we kind of talked about the liquid IV earlier, but
Yes.
I have a hard time drinking water, so I always drink Crystal Light.
Crystal Light,
How
yeah.
do you feel about that?
I feel fine with it. I mean, again, this is just my personal opinion. I didn't dive into too much on like water enhancements like Crystal Light or like liquid IV. I wanted more to touch on like just baseline stuff, but since I personally have a hard time drinking water throughout the day, I use things like that to flavor my water, which makes me coming back and want to drink it.
Also, I like it with it because I'm the same way. I found, unless I'm super thirsty, I don't give a rip. I'll drink pretty much anything. But like putting fresh fruit in like a water thing and then taking that water from the fresh fruit that's already in the water, I also gives it just gives it that little extra something to like, oh, like oranges or berries or cucumbers, yeah, melon, whatever it is. Yeah.
Great advice. And for a video, in case you couldn't hear it, talking about like adding stuff to your water to help enhance the flavor of it. We talked about a little bit Crystal Light, or like Mio is very popular, and then we had someone bring up adding fresh fruit to the water and then drinking that because it gives it just that little bit of flavor to come back. For myself, I have a hard time drinking just straight water, so having that flavor helps me come back and want another sip. All right. How are we feeling about water?
Scared.
Don't be scared. The more you know.
Yeah.
Just be careful where you're getting the water from. Make sure that it's clean, safe.
And a high pH.
Good. Just make sure you clean that filter every once in a while.
Oh, yes.
Also, I think you can get like buy water testing kits to see where all
Yeah.
your levels are with various stuff. I've never done it, but I'm like,
Part of me feels like I don't want to know.
yeah. There's
I think
that.
we're better off just
Right.
I'm afraid to drink my tap water now.
Yeah, I was drinking tap water every day until I started doing this research, and then it was just like, I should probably stop that.
Well, and it's odd because sometimes they say it doesn't matter if you drink the alkaline water. It doesn't matter if you
Yeah.
drink. And then all of a sudden I hear this and you go, okay, it does matter.
Yeah. And if you're not drinking like high concentration of alkaline water, you're drinking a little bit lower, so that pH level is a little bit lower, you're still going to get the benefits of that water. More research is showing that it's just going to take a longer process for our body to be able to use that water over a higher pH water.
Makes sense. Very good.
All right.
Thank
I think
you.
we're all good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, everybody. Good talk, good talk.